This is the F Words podcast with Dr Leandra Brady-Walker.
It's really, really good.
Where we have the difficult conversations. Stuff that we don't want to talk about or even think about, but should.
We should do it because we have to do it.
The tricky, uncomfortable things like fornication.
Effing important things.
Finances, fertility.
Things like fannies.
And all the other F words. This is less tea with the neighbours and more drinks with your girlfriends. Nothing is off limits. And here is Leandra, your host, the Cosmopolitan Hippie.
So glad you could join me for this week's F word, fine. In this episode, I talk to Amber. Amber is a human behaviour expert who just wants to experience life and do epic stuff. She thrives on helping people find their purpose and live life authentically. She's fun and energetic and really knows her stuff. She's also down to earth and truthful and has no problems in telling it exactly how it is, which is why I loved our conversation so much. Make sure you listen out for when Amber makes me lost for words, because it does not happen often. This is the F Words. I'm your host, Leandra, and let's explore fine. So we were talking, and we were talking about my podcast, and you said that you hate the word fine. Why do you hate the word fine?
Do you just want to have a fine life, Leandra?
No! Like, just in what way? Like, is it just fine, or is it like fine? What?
You know what? Like, yeah, good point. You know, like I'm good with fine, but that only satisfies some of the senses. And in my opinion, the word fine, like I'm fine, is just a big lie, really. You know, whether we know we're lying to ourselves or we're lying to the world around us. It's like it is such a conditioned automatic reaction to say fine. It suffocates expression. It smothers honesty. It stops us from really being authentic to ourselves because, you know, for so long we've heard the word, I'm fine. So we don't do anything about how we actually really feel underneath the fine. So then that creates like a deep, dark, toxic concoction that just builds up, and then people go into behaviors to cover up the feeling of just fine. But it just destroys your life. Look, to be honest,
you really hate the word fine.
Because, you know, my passion in my life is to help people, or just, you know, what really drives me is unlocking someone's potential. So when they use the word fine, that's the opposite of that.
I guess so, because yeah, you're right. Because I mean, like, you know, being awesome and being happy and being great, and then being like horrible and sad and everything, they're like two ends of the spectrum. Whereas fine it's literally nothing. It's like you're not good, you're not bad, you're nothing. Mm-hmm. I think being in nothing is possibly worse. It's like when we say in chiropractic, like it's not pain that's the problem, it's numbness.
Exactly, and that's what fine is. It's a number. Or the person has numbed their emotions. And I mean, like I've said it, you've said it. It's like I'm not just talking about like other people, like I do it as well.
Oh yeah, it's ingrained.
Just try and pick up. Yeah, totally. But when you say the word numbness, it's exactly what it is. It's like I was just talking about this earlier. When just recently I went through experience of, the loss of mum, and in this world, bless her, rest her soul, and leaving a long-term partner. And I experienced pain that I didn't even know existed. Like I had no idea that I could experience that kind of pain. But on the other end of that was feelings of, I'm going to have to go with the words like just enlightening feelings that I didn't even know existed. So fine is like, it's that nothingness that numbs. Usually it's a number of pain, right? It's like, no, I'm fine because I don't want to face the discomfort. But when we numb the discomfort, we numb the good stuff. You can't selectively numb emotion. So fine numbs your life.
I completely agree with that, because I know I talk to lots of people, and, you know, and also being a chiropractor as well, like people are so scared of pain and they're so scared of bad stuff. But you're right. Like I believe that you need to go through everything, because every single emotion is part of the human experience. Mm-hmm. And like literally, like, I mean, it's physics. You can't have up without down. You can't have light without dark. Like you cannot. Yeah.
Exactly.
Ooh. So tell me more about these, tell me more about, this horrible, bad period you went through and like what you learned from it.
Well, I was traveling the world and I got a phone call, or lots of phone calls because I was overseas, and my mum had been and she had a heart attack, right? And she was in hospital, and I didn't have a close connection with my mum really my entire life at all. I don't know, that it was one of those weird situations where when I was the kid, I always felt like I was the adult. So I never really had this closeness. And but in the last couple of years, as you grow up, you let that stuff go. And so you go back into their life no matter what happened, and you start to get back in. So I was starting to form a relationship again with mum, which is really beautiful because I grew up with my dad and my stepmom. And actually, Ronsley, our dear friend Rons himself, I rang him, of course, and said, Rons, can you get mum some juice and stuff to the hospital because she was in Brisbane? And he did, of course. And then they sent her home. And then 2 weeks later, I got another phone call and she'd had another heart attack and passed away. So that led to a series of events of coming home, which led to another series of events with my partner, which just led to a series of events where I went, oh, okay, this isn't the relationship for me for the rest of my life. And so I left. And as you can imagine, when you lose a parent, you probably can't think of anything less inviting than leaving, someone's loving arms, right? And so it was excruciating, an excruciating decision. But being in the industry that I'm in, and as well, you have to walk through the really scary times, because if you go around, if I had have said, what happened right now is fine, and been okay with it and just gone on with my life, I would have been long-term, seriously, I would have been so unimpressed with myself. Like, I would have been fucked, right? Long term, my life would have felt miserable. It might have been okay, but I would have been settling, and that is nothing to do. This is all about my values, right? It's got nothing to do with anyone else, and just about my values and what I knew I wanted. And I would have been settling, and I was, being in the industry that I'm in, and, spiritual philosophy and personal development, human behavior. I was like, you got to go through it, Ams. You got to do the hard work now. You got to do the hard stuff, and you come out the other side. And I learned something that I hope everyone can take away from this, Leandra, if anything at all, is that when you're in that kind of pain, that you do what you do to survive, yes, but if you surrender into it, not only will you get through it faster, but you will understand that we have limitless amounts of self-power and strength that you couldn't even imagine. When you feel pain that deeply on that level and you let it ripple through every cell and every bit of your soul, you come out. There's no words. It is like I was just kind of tapped into this place that I was like, wow, I had no idea that I had this inside of me, or that I was this person and had this kind of freedom. So that was really the experience in a nutshell, which is incredible.
That is incredible. And I mean, I'm the same. Like, I've had similar types of experiences, and I love hearing you talk about this because I think people are so scared. I mean, why do you think people are so frightened to actually feel things?
Yeah, good question. And it's actually really on all levels, because we've got physical, we've got mental, we've got emotional, we've got spiritual, right? They're the four main ones that we really understand. They're the basic ones. And there's a primitive part of our brain, which you know very well, our reptilian brain, the fight or flight, that's like, no, pain equals, like, pain again and again and again actually equals death in our mind. So we're programmed to avoid pain. And we're very complicated, multidimensional beings, as I just said. So emotional pain to our primitive mind is a no, I don't want to do that. So if we're not, I guess, consciously aware of our pain or our emotions, or we don't understand emotions and what they really mean and how they're actually a really important part, like you said, we'll avoid emotional pain, we'll avoid emotional discomfort. So we run away from it because there's a primitive part of us hardwired that says pain equals death. And we're so spoilt in the Western world. I mean, it's 47 degrees here on the Gold Coast right now, and it's like, don't matter, I got aircon, you know? Don't let me get uncomfortable. I got a headache, take the damn Panadol. And that, you know, we can go on and on and on and on about how we treat symptoms and how we numb things that don't actually solve the problem, right? If you got a headache, drink some damn water.
That's so. When I run my women's retreats, I have a lady who comes along, and last time most of the girls were from Darwin, and you know, I'm in Melbourne and it's cold, and one of the first things I had to do was 8 o'clock in the morning, you know, they went outside and they stood barefoot on the grass, and all of them were like, it's so cold, oh my God, this is so horrible. And B, who was running the workshop, she said to them, yeah, it's uncomfortable. She's like, but are you dying? Is this painful? Yeah. She's like, it's uncomfortable. Deal with uncomfortable. Like, you know.
Love it.
Yeah. Like, and you know, and when you start to feel things that are just uncomfortable, then you can start to work out that, okay, this is uncomfortable because, yeah, I don't really like it. Or this is uncomfortable because it's my intuition going off and saying, hey, I probably shouldn't be doing this. But if you don't play with that and you don't like experience it, it's a muscle. How are you ever going to understand that, oh, no, my spiny senses are tingling and this is not good for me, or, oh, I don't like this and I just need to go through it to, you know, get this personal growth and get to this next stage of, you know. And do you agree?
I love what you said there about intuition, and that's, I kind of touched on it just for a second before when you mentioned emotions, and then I said it just then, how important going into uncomfortable emotions are, because emotions are, they're talking to us. They're trying to communicate. You know, if you feel angry, well, what's triggering you? And like when we look at anger is the feeling of being out of, like, feeling helpless. If we, like, helplessness, and people respond to helplessness with anger, right? So, of course, it's all got to do with conditioning and how we saw anger when we were little, and if anger was actually used in response to, I guess, pain, or if it was actually looked down upon. So, you know, anger needs to be invited and then understood, welcomed, and then understood and listened to so that we can move into it. Okay, so why am I angry? Well, I feel helpless. Okay, so why do I feel helpless? I feel helpless because, I realize I feel helpless because I'm looking at a situation at work and feeling like there's nothing I can do about it. Okay, well, is there anything I can do about it? You know what? Maybe there is. Oh, great. Well, then let's do something. Oh, but what if there isn't anything I do? Okay, there's nothing I can do about it. Great. Then let me stop worrying. And imagine if you just went in and followed it and asked the questions and led into it, you could alleviate feelings of anger and then feelings of stress. And then often anger is a mask of sadness, right? So it's like, all right, well, then let's get to the sadness. What do I feel sad about? Well, I feel sad, you know, and that's what my job involves, like delayering people to get to the core of what's going on, to face it, to walk through it, to then own it, to be empowered and walk away.
I completely agree with this. I mean, there's a couple of things that you brought up there that, you know, trigger for me. So one, like I have a 4-year-old and she's starting to work out these sorts of things. So, you know, she says things like, oh, you make me sad. And we have to say, no, who makes you sad? Oh, Asha makes me sad. You know, and starting to, like, she's just starting to play with feelings and things. And, you know, she's just starting to work out cause and effect. So she stabbed her sister with a pencil the other day. I know, right? I'm like, oh, okay. I'm an only child, so I'm like, what the hell? But yeah, so just like, why would you stab your sister? But so for me, I was like, okay, I know she meant to do it, but she didn't understand how it was going to play out. So when Edie cried, and then she got really upset about it, because she didn't understand that. Oh wait, and then she went. And then, like, when I went, so I said to her, I wasn't angry, but I said, you know, I said, well, what happened? And she burst into tears and she, like, ran into her room and she's like, and, like, you know, I had to call her out and say, look, I'm not angry, but we just have to talk about the fact that you can't stab your sister. Like, you just can't. Yeah. Do you see what happened?
Maybe not.
Yeah, like, that's probably not the best thing for you to do. So, yeah, so it's fascinating seeing how emotions play out for her. So she's just discovered embarrassed and what embarrassed means. And so she's, you know, and yeah, that's really interesting. She's like, oh, I feel really embarrassed. She was sick the other day and she's like, I feel really embarrassed that I threw up on your bed. And I'm like, well, you don't have to, because it's all right. And she's like, yeah, but I do. I'm like, okay, that's okay. Like
That's okay, right? And that's a perfect. I love that. You know, that's my favorite saying, right? Because it's one of my favorite sayings. I'll probably think of more, but it really is. Can I tell you why?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, please do. Tell me why that's okay.
Sorry, I just interrupted, but it made me so excited. And it made me so excited that you said it to your little girl, because I say it to now grown adults and myself. It's the perfect response to the shame reaction that our ego creates within ourselves, right? Because our ego always wants everything to be perfect, everything to be in control, and to, you know, have power, whatever it is, whether it wants to put someone else down or put itself down, whether or not it's strengthening its own self-identity. And so imperfections and vulnerability to the ego are death, or they're the extreme emotional pain. It's embarrassment, right? That's embarrassing that I did something that may have not been perfect, because wouldn't it have just been better if I didn't vomit on your bed? I should have vomited in the toilet. In fact, I shouldn't have vomited at all, right?
Yep.
So and that's okay, gives this, I mean, say to yourself, like, think about, like, if we're talking about a podcast, okay, let me give you a personal example. When I first started my podcast, which I'm now changing, because I didn't take it seriously. I met Ronsley Vaz, you know, our awesome mate, and I was doing YouTube, and he's like, "You should start a podcast." Surprise, surprise! That's what he said to me.
He tells everyone that. Like in the grocery store, telling the checkout chicks, "You should start a podcast."
He does run an event that we attend and speak at called We Are Podcast, so it's probably got something to do with it.
Yeah. Now my 4-year-old wants a podcast, so yeah. Thanks.
Oh,
Leslie.
yes, we are doing that. I'm all for that.
She had episode 1. She gets too nervous, so we'll give her a little bit of time, but she will have a podcast.
And that's okay. And that's okay, right? Okay, so sorry, I got sidetracked. Okay, anyway, yeah. So started the podcast, and I didn't take it seriously, and I just kind of like put the audio from the videos on the podcast, and then started playing it, and like people were like, "This is great!" Like, and then I went to the /MC to the We Are Podcast event and heard all the speakers, like, you know, it's like these podcast obsessed people, and I was like, "Oh God, I've been doing it all." I hope no one listens to my podcast and then I was like, oh, okay, so let's take it seriously now. Let's amp this up. Like, it's going to be lots of fun. And, you know, and instead of feeling like really ashamed about that or embarrassed about that, I just say to myself, you know what, and that's okay. And the feeling in your body shifts, and we're emotional beings. So if we can shift our emotions, then we can shift our behavior into empowered behavior, and we can be at cause rather than be at effect, right? So just saying to yourself, and that's okay. Like, okay, you know, this summer I have cellulite on my thighs. I've never had cellulite before, and that's okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, to everything, anything and everything. I failed a test, or I crashed my car. Well, you know, maybe not crash car, and that's okay. Like, I'm thinking of like injuring someone or something, but it's
not okay to hurt someone. But I get that, yeah. Like, and that's okay. And it's funny the amount of times I say in a day, and that's okay. Like, because I'm like, well, it is okay. Like, you know,
yeah.
I mean, like, I have to remember, like, you know, I say it because I think to myself, like, her problems compared to like my problems, I feel are like, you know, little, but really for her, those problems are huge problems.
Totally.
And to be told that her problems, it's okay how she's feeling about them. Like, I mean, then she'll grow up, hopefully. Like, it's taken me 30 odd years to learn this. I'm hoping if I can instill it in my 4-year-old, that when she gets to this age, she can just be like, have no fear to do things and no fear of retribution or shame or anything, because whatever happens, it's okay. Like, you know, like you stabbed your sister in the face. Well, it's okay. Like, just, you probably do it. Like,
let's do something about it.
It's like, let's not do that again. But do you see what happened? And she's like, and she admitted it.
Yeah.
Like, she's just like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Yes, you shouldn't have done that. Like, I'm like, oh, yeah. It's and like, you know, so, and then the second point you touched on was that, you know, actually following those feelings and going into those emotions. I have quite a few coaching clients who just will not do it. They don't like to sit down and listen to their own thoughts because they're too scared and they're too frightened and they don't like what they hear. So if someone's listening, how can somebody just start? Like, just start, like, you know, to follow those things?
Start to follow your emotions or start to follow your thoughts or be okay with your own thoughts? Which one?
Both. Well, let's go with be okay with your own thoughts first.
Okay, so firstly, I probably shouldn't have said your own thoughts because the thing is that we don't own our thoughts.
Oh.
And that's the problem.
I see. I mean, how do you mean we don't own them? Like, are they not ours? Are they being like beamed in? Or do you mean that we don't feel like we don't take ownership of them?
Okay, so two things there. Let's go with thoughts, like where do thoughts come from? Maybe that's the best place to start. Okay, now this question we could talk about forever and ever and ever, but if we just talk about where thoughts come from a perspective of our self-perception, of our own beliefs about the world, like men are this, money is that, I am this should be this way, this is right, this is wrong, blah, blah, blah. Where do those thoughts come from, Leandra? I promise I'll give you the answer, but you can have a guess if you want.
I know, like, is this a test? Should I have studied?
It's not a test.
Well, all right, let's see. Scientifically, and my chiropractic brain wants to say that they are, I know, right? I want to say that they're like electrical impulses.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
They are an electrical impulse. That's the nature of a thought, but where does the belief come from?
Ooh. My husband should answer this question. He's good with this. But I believe that
If you let me ask you so you don't feel like you're under the pressure.
Yeah, I
so
know.
much.
I'm
Let
like,
me
oh
make
my
this.
God.
Okay. So
Sweating
how
bullets
did you
here.
learn that it's hot? How did you learn that it's hot to touch a fire?
I think I touched a fire probably. I think I have memories of that.
Right. Awesome. Okay. There you go. It's a memory.
Oh, good. Yup.
You
Okay.
experienced it. Or what about, say a kid goes to a Catholic school and they learned that Jesus is on the cross and if you lie, you'll go to hell. Those belief systems came from where? Someone else.
Yeah,
An
someone
authority
else,
figure,
people
right?
who told them, school.
Yeah. And where did those people
Parents.
get their memories from? Someone else. Where did they get them? Someone else. And someone. It's conditioning, right? So thoughts on an individual level, because there's proof that there are a collective consciousness of thought, right, that we all share, and that thoughts can come in that aren't our conditioning but are others and are shared, maybe like cultural or not genetic conditioning but gender conditioning. Like, there's other thought consciousnesses, but when we're talking about our own thought consciousness, our own ego, our own sense of self, it's experience, it's memory, it's stored, right? Thoughts come from the past, thinking, remembering about the past. And even when we're thinking about the future, we're only perceiving the future based on our past.
Gotcha.
Right? We can project into the future and be like, oh, I wonder about this, or I worry about that, or what's going to happen, or I don't know. And even if we're worried about the unknown, we're only worried about the unknown because in the past we were told that we should worry about the unknown.
Yeah, that's so true.
Right? So all of these thoughts, right, now we're back to like whose thoughts are those? Okay, so they are just thoughts, but they are not, it's just not 100, and I just want to be really specific, it's just not 100% correct to own them.
Ooh.
It's like it's very simple and easy to identify, well, that's my thought, but that's not who I am. But even more correctly, it's like, well, you don't even own the thought. Like, how do you own that? Owning that would require you to have an identity, and an identity is just an illusionary self-perception. So it's technically incorrect to say that you could own anything. Because who's I?
That. Because I have lots of people who say to me, like, because I business coach, and people who say, but I can't do that. Like someone else has done it. It's like, well, that idea is not yours. It's not theirs. It's not someone else's. That idea is just an idea. Mm-hmm. I love it.
So to answer the question of how do I get comfortable to sit alone with my thoughts, well, firstly, disown them. They're not yours. How about you okay, I use this example all the time. I was interviewed yesterday, I did the same thing. Have you ever laid in bed, Leandra, at night and gone, my God, my mind won't stop?
I'm usually too tired now, but yes, there was a time.
So maybe when you were like a teenager and you had energy and shit.
Yeah. I had things like actual like stupid things, the things that now I look back and go, why was I worried about that? Yes.
So you've said that, right? Oh, my mind won't stop. Okay, so your mind won't stop. So you realize that there's a mind.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a mind that won't stop. Are you the mind? Or is it the mind that's not stopping?
I am not the mind. It's the mind that is not stopping.
Right. So who's able to say the mind won't stop? Who sees that?
I don't know.
Right? So it's like that part of us. Some people call it awareness. Some people call it consciousness. Some people call it soul, whatever you want to. It's a little bit trippy. And, I mean, you could maybe experience this again if I say, can you think of your next thought right now, Leandra? Can you think of it? What's your next thought?
I don't know.
Exactly.
Like, if you told me to think about an elephant, I'd probably think about an elephant.
Yeah, because you know what an elephant looks like because you've seen it in the past. You have a memory of it.
Of course.
Right. So being comfortable with your own mind being comfortable with the mind and its thinking begins with realizing that it's just a mechanism and there is nothing to be afraid of. And I labeled the mind. I labeled my own sense of self, my own this mind. I'm trying to avoid saying my own. It's just easier for us to perceive it, right? When we say my own. But I label that part of the mechanisms of what's happening up in my brain and my emotions and my thoughts, right? And I call it Amanda. I'm like, yo, Amanda, shush. Because she's always looking at the past, comparing to someone else, fearing the future, because our thoughts only happen milliseconds or moments after a moment has passed. Our thinking is always in the past or a projection of the future. It's never still in the now. It's never still. Right now, though, and now, by the time I've even said now, and then that moment, and that moment, and that moment's gone, there is no thinking. So the problem isn't that people can't sit alone with their thoughts. It's that they think that they are their thoughts and that they are that self-perception and they're not creating space between them. They're not separating their self from it. So they're wrapped up in their thoughts and every thought has a perception. Every perception has an emotional reaction. So what people are feeling are this constant state of anxiety because they're never completely present. They're always in the past, either wanting the past to happen again or avoiding the past, or in the future, wanting for the future or trying to avoid the future. So there's a constant state of anxiety and dissatisfaction when we're not present in the current moment. So where people don't want to sit still with their mind because they feel very uncomfortable. So the solution is to not try and stop thinking, but to just take that space as the observer who realized that the mind doesn't stop at night when we lay in bed. Separate yourself from it. Take a breath. Try and think of your next thought. Be present. Feel calm.
Oh, my goodness. And then there's just stillness, isn't there?
Yeah.
Because you're right. If you start to try and think about your next thought, you kind of go... There's just nothing.
Nothing.
Well, that is an excellent trick.
Does that answer the question?
I think so. I
don't know if it does, man. You said, how can people begin to sit still with their mind?
Begin to sit still and just be okay with that inner voice that just keeps chatting. So you just say,
man,
Susan?
it's not, the idea is not to, yes. Shut up.
Zip it, Deborah.
Actually, can we please tweet that? Zip it, Deborah.
You've got to give her like, an 80s housewife name. You just have to.
Yes, I love it. I just want to add in there because this is something that I struggled with for so long, is that the point and what we're really talking about, let's use it, is meditation, right? Which is just focus. It's just concentration on the present moment. It's all it is. Don't be afraid of it, peeps, because you go-getters out there who are like, listen to us. We're go-getters too. When you practice stillness and observe your mind, you have so much more ability to use your mind for creativity and for thinking about things and problem solving about business and being more effective when you're in charge of it rather than it running you. So the mind fears stopping. So it'll tell you every excuse of why it shouldn't. Now, when we meditate, the idea is not to stop the mind, but just let it do its thing and not get caught up in it. So if it's going, you're like, I can't meditate because the mind doesn't stop. You're not meant to. You don't meant to stop it. You're just meant to not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like not buy into it. It's like, sure.
Yeah.
Do your thing. It's
Yeah.
okay. Whatever, Deborah. Like, just because that's it. Because I mean, that's the thing. Like, I always, like, you know, meditating, I always found it like ridiculous. And, you know, someone told me, like, you know, thoughts are like you know, you look at them as a ship. They come towards you.
Yeah.
You're like, sure, there's a thought, and off it goes. Like, they happen, but you don't buy into it. You don't step on the boat. You're just standing on the shore watching them go past, or clouds in the sky. And I think that was the first thing that really got me when of, like, you know, learning about meditation. I was like, holy crap! Like, yeah, it's not something. Yeah, it's not something you have to sit and chant and say Om and shave your head and things. So
No, and you know what? If you did do that, that's okay, but you don't have to.
exactly,
And that's okay.
And that's okay. So it's interesting. You love the words "that's okay," but you don't like the word "fine."
Oh, such a good point. And I was going to go there, but you already went there.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. Okay, because fine is a reaction to how are you often, or like how's life. It's like, yeah, it's fine. Well, is it really? You know? And okay, this is the thing. Firstly, like, we believe our thoughts. And if we believe that we're fine, but we're not really fine because we're not really living true to ourselves, then we're not going to do anything about it. Okay? Whereas if we, like I said before, if we follow emotions of discomfort, then we can, you know, follow emotions of depression. Or like, I'm depressed in my life. Okay, why? You know, and if you dig to the bottom, I can guarantee you, everyone that I have worked with that has depression, or everyone that I've spoken to, is because they're focusing on a perception of life that they think they should have to be happy, or their mind is focused and is definitely not in the present moment. They might be focusing on what makes them feel unhappy, and it would make them feel even more depressed, because depression isn't an identity, but it has become an identity. Depression is an emotion that we all experience, but when we are attached to our mind, it becomes our identity, and it feels incredibly, incredibly, incredibly difficult to separate ourselves from it. So it consumes us, right? And then people, you know, and then in the Western world, I'm not against medication for depression or anything like that. I'm just saying that it does, like, it ends up, you know, we numb it. And sometimes that's really needed to get to a different space. It's like a leg up at times. I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying that it's not necessarily perhaps the solution, right? Because then those people who are numb are just fine. So that's kind of a label to an identity, is fine, right? Whereas, and that's okay, is a response to shame. It's a response to an identity. It's a response to an emotional state of being that will freeze you, that you have labeled yourself, that you've identified with. It's a response to collapse it so you can let go of it, so you're not overwhelmed by it, so it doesn't run your life. Does that make sense? That's the difference.
Definitely makes sense. Instead of saying I'm fine, it's no, that's okay. So, hey, I'm not feeling great. I'm not doing well, but that's okay.
Exactly. And then it's like, and that's okay. So now let's deal with it.
Yep.
Right? So it's not like, and that's okay. It's not like, man, I'm stuck in the mud. Oh, and that's okay. It's like, it's not like don't fucking get out of the mud. It's just like, don't get caught up in your emotions about being in the mud, so we can do something about it.
I say that all the time. Like, you can holiday here, and you know, but you don't live here.
Yes, I love it. Yes.
Like, we're having a little bit of a break here. Just feel it, just be there, but you don't live here. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's that's it. Like I say, like with Asha, like when she has a little bit of a meltdown, sure, go feel your feelings. She does this. So sometimes she just goes, I just need to go feel my feelings.
Yes. That's hilarious.
So she goes to her room and she feels her feelings, and I'm like, okay, well, when you're ready, you can join us again. And she does. She comes back.
Asha.
I know, like, well, she's a bit
I
special.
love her.
I know.
Is she coming to the? Is she?
Oh, she's speaking
to. Oh yeah,
because
of course she is.
I know Ronsley was like, oh yeah, you know, you can speak, and he's like, you know what, Asha should speak. I'm like, great.
Yes.
So I'll just play second fiddle to my 4-year-old.
She can be on. Can she be on My Speech this year too?
Yes,
in
she
My
can.
Speech.
She
I'm
can be
not
in
emceeing this year. I'm speaking.
Oh, brilliant. It's this year, isn't it? Of course.
I know, we're already 2017.
I know. Yeah, don't worry. I think she will be up there with... By the end of it, she was running that thing.
She'll be emceeing it, man.
Right.
Mind you, whoever's listening, Ash is like four.
She's
five?
4. She's episode number 1 as well. So... But that's it. Like, I mean, I think people are quite frightened, and that's it. Like, she's 4, so she understands. We're trying to teach her about her feelings and her emotions, but yeah, like, it's okay to feel things. Like, you should feel things. I have quite actually. Ronsley's episode is about being in a funk, and I think he says in that episode that he's just like, oh, I just don't. Like, I don't feel things. Like, I just don't need to, and I'm like, I think that's a problem.
I think that's a problem.
I don't. Like,
the irony that he was in a funk for his funk talk, hey?
He was. If no one has listened to that episode, you have to go back and listen. I think it's episode 3 to funk, and it's a great episode when we talk about the same sort of very similar stuff. We talk about, like, feelings and going through things, and like I remember when I ran my first retreat afterwards, I felt numb. Literally numb for 3 weeks. I had achieved something huge. It was fantastic. I loved it, and I was on a high. And then I didn't go to a low. I just went numb, and I was numb for 3 weeks. I felt nothing, and I just was like, all right. So
yeah, right.
I was like, well, I'll just deal with this. I'll be like, fine, I'll just be numb for a while, and I got over
totally.
it. I got sad. I love it. I wasn't happy. I got over it, but. Like, I decided not to worry myself about the fact I couldn't feel anything. I just decided that this is obviously something that I have to go through. It's obviously, and now I've done it. Like, I feel like, I did it. It was a while. It was 3 weeks of just, I couldn't be happy. I couldn't be sad. I couldn't cry. I couldn't laugh. I just was just like.
It's like you're empty kind of thing. And that's the thing. Like, I love that you're saying this, and like, I want to point it out, I want to highlight it, because I want people to really, really get it. If they haven't gotten it, again, it's like, and that's okay, is a really great response to help you to relax into surrender into something, really, right? That's kind of the point. It's not, oh, and that's okay, so let's not do anything about it, or that's okay, well, I'm not going to change, or that's okay. It's not a justification. It just is a gateway to surrender, because when you surrender, you'll feel it. It's a gateway to vulnerability. Vulnerability allows you to move through your ego. It moves you into that space of freedom and allows you to let things go so that you can get to actually where you wanted to go through the numbing, but you don't numb, you feel.
And that's it, because I spent a lot of my life fighting things. Like, I tried to fight being an anxious person. I tried to fight who I was and what I am. And, I'm an only child, and I have a very specific personality. And I just and a very specific sense of style. And for a long time, I tried to fight that to fit into, a mold and everything, and, and just be a little bit... I always saw this, like, these Zen-like people, and who drew people to them, and that's just not who I am. But when I worked out that screw it, like, that's not who I am, and I am just going to accept it and surrender into who I am, there's enormous power in that. And there's enormous power, I believe, in actually saying that I own these emotions, I own what I'm feeling. It's okay if I feel this way, and this is just where we are, like,
Yeah, totally. Not to confuse people there, because I know what you said when you said I'm going to own these emotions.
Oh, yeah, we talked about them not being technically our own, and then I was owning them.
Because, like, look... Yeah. If I was listening to this interview, I'd be like, but before Amber, you said, and then Leandra said that I own my emotions. Just wondering. I don't believe you now. So in the it was just colloquial language is what you use, though, right? So it's just like, I own it, as in, like, you know what, I'm going to admit that I'm experiencing it, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
it's like you're vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I can admit that I am anxious, like, you know, that I have tendencies towards anxiety, and it's not something that I want to hide, and it's not something that, I try to gloss over or anything. But if I do become anxious, and that's okay. Like, you know, I don't need to be medicated for anything or anything like that. But, you know, I have my strategies to deal with it. But it's not something that I don't feel ashamed of it. I don't hide away from it. Like, it's just okay. So yeah, it's, you know, like saying that I own it. It's not like, yes, that's mine. It's just that, well, yeah, it's okay. Like, it's all right. So
I love it.
yeah.
And it's just like, it's saying, because really what you're saying when you're saying, and that's okay, is like, well, it's okay to not be perfect. It's not okay to have it all together. It is okay not to be perfect. It is okay to not have it all together. And it's you're collapsing the ego, right, is what's happening. Whereas I'm fine is protecting it.
That's interesting.
Well, it's an armor. I'm fine is an armor. And it's like a lack of vulnerability, complete lack of vulnerability. And you're numbing your negative emotions or your uncomfortable state, whatever you want to call it, perceived negative emotions. And so then you don't get to feel the other end. And that was the point of my story of going so deep with telling you about, you know, mum and leaving my ex-partner, is that was fucked up to feel that. Like, and I apologize for swearing, but I really want people to understand. Like,
we're all good.
Excellent. Like, and when I say that, I don't mean the situation I regret it happening or anything. If anything, I'm worlds of gratitude for the experience, and not joking even a little bit. Like, it has completely transformed it's taking me to a new level of understanding about life and myself and emotions and fulfillment and happiness and all of that kind of stuff that I could not have even dreamed existed without going through that. It's like you walk through the darkness, you go through it, you feel into it, because it's okay that I fell apart. It's okay that some days I didn't want to get out of bed. It's okay that 3 weeks later I was like, 10 a.m. sounds like it's about beer o'clock so I can get through my day. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, to go through that, to come out the other side. Whereas if I just said, you know what, I'm fine. Everyone, I'm fine. No, you know what, please don't message me and ask if I'm okay. No, I don't. If I had been like that, I would have still been stuck back there, and I would have just been coping.
I think you've said a lot of things that people would identify with there. Because I think I again started showing a little bit more vulnerability as well, and you know, and that's okay. And I think it's allowed for some deeper connections with people as well. Like, a lot more people are like, yes, like I feel like, you know, it just opens up these doors with other people, because other people are like, yes, I get that. Like, I am there. And that makes me feel better, because I can see if you can do that, you know, you can go through it. It's okay. Like, I went to a friend's place yesterday, like, you know, one of Ash's friends, and I walked into their house, and their house was a mess, just a mess. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, nope, like, this is awesome. Like, I like you so much better now, because I know that your house looks like my house. Like, and then she's like, do you think we could have a little bit of wine? And I'm like, it's after midday. I'm like, you are now becoming one of my, like, you know, up there with my mum friends. Cause like, I think there's solidarity in that, isn't there?
Yeah. Because what you're describing is empathy and connection. Because if you say you're fine all the time, like, that's when we go into, because when I say this word, I don't want people to flip out, because we've all got narcissism in us, or we've all got narcissistic traits. Everyone has. But it's very narcissistic to not be, I don't want to say it's narcissistic to not be vulnerable, but it's a narcissistic tendency when we won't show vulnerability, which means we can't connect into empathy, because empathy is saying, you know what, I get it. I've been there. And so now we connect and we can move through it together, right? Sympathy is, I feel sorry for you. Empathy is like, I feel this with you. Whereas if you're not vulnerable and you don't say, you know, I'm not fine, then you can't connect. And anything that you try and connect with people is kind of condescending, whether or not it's on purpose. It's always unconscious. Like, narcissism is really unconscious. A lot of the time, that's what it is. It's very unconscious. But essentially, narcissists and sociopaths, they don't feel empathy because they have such a mask of a lack of vulnerability. Everything's always okay. Everything's always fine. Do you know what I mean?
I know some of those people. Lots of them on Facebook.
And I mean, we've all been there and we've all been that person, but it's like, you know, like that's what it is. That's essentially what creates that lack of vulnerability is lack of connection to themselves. Scary, man.
Yeah. Like not being able to say, I'm not okay. And you know, I find that, you know, it's very similar with this podcast. When people say I'm not okay and they talk about it, like when the words come out of their mouth, they lose all this power over them. And all of a sudden it's not such this big nebulous thing anymore. It's like, oh, I've spoken it out loud and the world didn't collapse around me and it's okay. And you get it. And I feel so much better. Like I feel a lot freer. Like, yeah, because you're right. The mask comes off. You don't have to hold up this facade. There is so much energy. And I remember how much energy it took to hold up the perfect facade.
Yeah.
I mean, I podcast now and I do my Facebook Live videos and I do everything. I'm in my pajamas right now. And, you know, when I did...
It's all right, I'm not wearing a bra.
You know they're bad for you.
Oh, wait, that's most days.
But that's it. Like, I mean, you know, when you do that, it's so much easier, right? Things just like you look at my first videos and they are like, I mean, the first videos I did were like hair done, makeup done, beautiful backdrop. I'm scripting this. Let's do it perfectly. And that the energy it takes to be and hold up what you want people to see. But what I found is when I got rid of that, like I was a lot happier and people connected with me a lot more.
Beautiful, isn't it?
It is. I never really thought, but I had to be okay with it. I had to just start to be okay with the fact that I was not going to show a perfect persona. And that is scary. It's really scary because when you show you, like you're very, I was very scared, particularly of people saying, oh, well, that's not good enough. Oh, well, you suck. Oh, well, that's horrible. And they were rejecting the real me.
It actually destroys life. Perfection destroys people's life. That's why I wrote a book called The Unfuckwithable Life that's all about vulnerability and connection and authenticity. Because, and that's why when we were talking about this, I was like, I hate the word fine because it's the opposite of that. It's the opposite of life, really.
It really is. Because you're right. Fine is the mask. Fine is the armor. Fine is the wall we put between us and other people. So that we really don't have to show exactly who we are to the outside world. But what do you think about that? Like, you know, when people are scared, like, you know, so yeah, great, be vulnerable. I want to be out there. But what if people are scared, like super scared that when they do this, somebody is actually going to reject, like it's okay to reject the mask, but what if they're going to reject you, like the real you?
They are.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah.
End of story, and that's okay. Like, that's what vulnerability is, being willing to be rejected for who you actually are, because people are going to reject you no matter what, because rejection of someone else is only a rejection of self. So if someone is judging you and they're rejecting you, they're only doing it because they're rejecting a part of themselves. So anyone's rejection is just a reflection of themselves. So if you can remember that and understand that, then anyone's shit about you is actually their own stuff. So don't own people's stuff. Don't own people's stuff. Be okay with the fact that not everyone's going to like you, ever. They're going to reject your mask, so you may as well be rejected for who you really are.
That's so true. I struggled with this to begin with. Like, you know, I listened a lot. Like, I could get like 100,000 people telling me I'm amazing, and I'll just get one person telling me I'm not good. I mean, I'm a lot better with this now. But to begin with, it was painful. And you know, Jacob said to me, not even Oprah and Jesus were universally liked.
No. In fact, they were despised.
Exactly. And he said, you know, he said most people will be indifferent to you. They just will. And he's saying there's going to be a very small amount of people who will hate you, and there'll be a small amount of people who will love you. He's like, but it's the yin and the yang, and you can't have one without the other. So,
100%.
and that's it. I'm like, you're right. I would rather somebody reject me and say, I hate you for who you are, than somebody reject, I don't know.
Hate for you who you aren't.
Exactly. Like, might as well stand up for something.
Mm-hmm. Because otherwise you'll fall for anything, right?
Yeah. That's a meme there.
I know who said that. Sorry.
Who
but
said
if anyone,
it?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Google it.
Yeah, anonymous. So, lots of stuff. But if someone, so what is your one small step out of all of the stuff we said, the one small step for somebody to move through this and, you know, to get to that point where they stop using fine and stop putting that armor up, what would it be?
Be okay with being not okay. That's it. And like, how do you do that? You realize that this is life. This is life. And if you try and numb the not okay parts, you are missing out on the most incredible ones.
It's so true. Because, yeah, like bad is not bad is not bad. Like you need bad, you need good. And numb is the problem. I used to say it to my clients all the time. I'm like, pain is not a problem. Pain means you're feeling something. Numb is a problem. So then you feel nothing. So that's a good one. Step.
Yes. You just got to walk towards that. Like walk into pain. Like follow it. Don't run from it. Don't numb it. Follow it. It's teaching you life. Fear is telling you where to go. If it terrifies you, fucking run at it.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I think about some of the scariest, worst times that I've gone through. And at the end of it, no matter what happened, it made me realize that I'm a lot stronger than I think I am. And I can handle stuff that I thought would break me. I would think I would never be able to go through that because it would kill me. And it didn't. And then at the end of it, you know, it's like, you know, there's stuff that's taken me years to get over, but at the end of it, I'm still alive. Like it didn't kill me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good. And it did. It led some, and like, you know, those bad experiences led to some of the best things of my life. So, yeah. And you're right. You're grateful for them. I mean, it might not happen in like 2 days. It might not happen 2 weeks. It might take you years to get there. But, you know, eventually you move into a spot of like, I am where I am.
Totally.
I'm grateful.
And that's the other thing. Like you've got to trust life explicitly. That's the word I use there, right?
Explicitly.
I'm writing at the moment, like I'm editing my book, and so I'm thesaurusing like a animal, like everything's thesaurus. But let's go with explicitly. You've got to trust life. No, implicitly. Oh my god.
Implicitly? I'll Google it.
I'm sorry. No one's gonna.
I don't think it. I think
my brain
implicitly.
I'm on 30% function. Okay. So, but it's okay. My point is, you need to trust that at some point, no matter what you go through pain-wise, you'll turn around and go, you know what? It couldn't have happened any other way, and I wouldn't have wanted it to. And you might not feel that for weeks, days, months, years, but it will happen.
Yeah.
Always.
And just trust that it will, and it's okay if you're not okay with it right now. And it's okay to admit it. And you know what? I've got a really great group of friends, and we can always admit that it's okay, that it's not okay. And like we like message each other like, oh my god, my kid is being an asshole, and like I love them, but today I just want to lock them outside. I'm like, that's okay. Yep.
And that's okay. Yeah. I don't have kids yet, but I like heaps of my friends. Like I'm at that age. Like seriously, everyone has babies and is married, or is getting married and having babies. And I'm not like and there's no, like everyone's all happy in their situations, right? Like I love that I don't have kids. In fact, I don't know, but it's like I hear them talk about themselves as being bad mothers because they do ABC, and I watch them. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, how do you hold life together? Like, I'm pretty sure you slept like 2.5 hours last night. If I sleep 2.5 hours, man, I will you won't get shit out of me. Like, and you're you do date, like, I'm helping look after friends' kids at the moment. I've babysat in the past. You get up at 4:30. It's incredible, but they're the worst at saying, like, I'm not good enough because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it's like, man, like, I just wanted to add in there, mums, you grew a human being.
Yep.
Give yourselves a damn break.
I know. Like, you don't have to be perfect 24/7, and it's you
Or ever.
Exactly. And you know what? Like, parenting was never even a verb for so long. You know, it's so new that we feel like we have to do things the right way.
Right.
And there is no right way.
There's good parents and bad parents and good parenting and bad parenting. No.
It's like, oh, you don't want to do that with them. You might damage them for life. I'm like, yeah, nah. And like, you know, just like there's a lot of stuff that I now remember like in my childhood. And I'm like, that would not be okay these days. But you know what? We're fine. Like, we are totally fine. Like, whatever.
So much so, and especially when they talk about their parents and, you know, so maybe they're having a fight with their partner or something's happening or, you know, I don't know, they break up or they don't feed them organic food every single meal or something. And I was like, man, I grew up on, like, meat and 3 veg, like, frozen food. And, you know, there were fights in my family home and there was divorces. And I was like, and I'm okay. Like, calm down. Like, your kids will work it out.
Exactly. So
anyway, we're probably how do we even get onto parenting?
Because everything comes back to parenting at the moment, because that is my entire life. I am practically a stay-at-home mum at the moment. So and for someone who has been like such a go-getter and such like a striving and everything, I've surrendered into the fact that nothing's happening right now. I just need to let myself.
That's okay.
And that's okay. Like, I'm not going to live here. But, you know, at this moment, there's a lot of other stuff going on. My husband's gone back to work full time. He's making his, you know, he's got an opportunity to make his stuff happen. Yeah. So I'm very okay with the fact that I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing this podcast. I love it. And we'll just see what happens. And that's huge for me to actually not. This is the first time in my entire life I'm not worried about the direction of my life, and I'm not trying to orchestrate it and architect it and like control every minute detail. And I feel like I've grown. I feel like I feel like I'm just like, I'm amazed at myself right now. So yeah, because I'm just okay.
Because you went into the uncomfortable place, didn't you?
Exactly. I'm like sitting, like really, it's funny because this was my worst nightmare. Like moving to a small country town, having my husband at work all the time, having 2 small children, having no direction, nothing of my own, and just pretty much being a mum. And my days are filled with housework and kids and nappies and nap time and dog McStuffins, and I have to feed people 3 times a day. Like, this is my worst nightmare. The only thing that could be worse is if we were in a caravan and like we were on top of each other. That would probably be it. And I'm like, and I've got no time to exercise, and I don't fit into any of my clothes, and what would it even matter anyway, because I'm not going anywhere to wear all my nice stuff. So like I wear black stretchy pants all the time, and I'm in my pajamas. So it's practically my worst nightmare, and I'm living it, and it's actually not bad. It's actually fine. Like, I'm okay. Like wow, this is actually great. I'm okay with this. So I think just surrendering it and doing it and just kind of being whatever, there's a lot of freedom in that, actually. So it's very interesting for me. So yes, I'm actually okay. I'm not fine. I'm actually all right. Like,
you didn't die.
I did not die. I'm living the worst stuff, and it's all right. So that's good. Yeah. So if you had a superpower, it was my secret question. What would it be? You could have anything.
It would be to be able to probably teleport, because I love traveling.
Good one, right? Yeah, with my bags though.
I just want to close my eyes.
Just be there. Just like, oh, Paris. Think of Paris. And oh my gosh, I'm in Paris. That's a good one. I'm glad you picked something, because everyone picks like really like nice things. Like, I want to heal people, and I want to like heal the world and grow things.
I'm selfish.
And I'm like, nobody wants to do it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to like teleport, be invisible, like fly. Why has no one said anything like that? And I'm like, is it just me? Good. I feel much better.
I feel like those people are just lying to themselves and they really want to teleport and be invisible, but they didn't feel it was okay to say that.
Exactly.
Or maybe I'm just totally self-absorbed. Oh, who knows?
Or I want forest animals to come and clean my house. That would be awesome. Thanks for listening to this episode of the F Words podcast. Fine. But now I want to know, have we made you think? Have we made you reevaluate how you use the word fine? Ask yourself, are you content living in a state of numbness, a state of fine, or do you want more?